Hi everyone, I am working on some strip piecing today. I hadn't actually planned on filming this, so I haven't got my tripod set up, so work with me, it's a little bit shaky. I'm just holding my camera in my hand. I just wanted to quickly show you what I'm doing, and I might show you bits and pieces and try and put this together. Hopefully you can see what I'm working on here. Okay, so these are pieces that I had left over from a quilted floor mat that I've done for my son. These are all strips that I cut in 3 inches. My aim right now is to use material from my stash. I'm not buying anything new, so I've got a whole pile of material over there, and I've been making pages from those fabrics to make into a quiet book for my son as well. So that's another project I'm working on, but I just wanted to show you this. Alright, so I've got these strips. They're 3 inches wide, and I'm basically just joining them together. By my estimation, I should need 25 of them. And just to show you what I'm doing, if I can do this one-handed at the moment, I'm randomly selecting different colors. They're all blues and purples, and I want them to be as mixed as possible. So I'm lining these up, then pinning them together, and then going through and just stitching them on my sewing machine here. I've already done a few of them. Now, my measurement that I'm working to is 30 inches wide, and to save myself having to measure them each time, I've put a little mark on my desk there and there, so that I can roughly estimate that each one works out to be 30. So these are not pressed yet, but this gives you an idea of what my strips are looking like. Oh, sorry, that's the back. See? Let's get it right. First one I've picked up, I've realized there's a piece that's sewn backwards, so that will need fixing. Let's see if we can find another one that's done properly. Here we go. So there's my strips. They're all blues. Trying to keep the shadow out of this. Different sizes, so some are really tiny, some are really long, some are in between lengths. I've done 17 of these so far, and I need to get to 25. So I'm going to continue to sew these together, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I'm starting to stitch my strips together. You can see what I'm doing here now. I've got one under the machine, and I'm just going to move on to the next strip. Find the 2 pieces that are pinned together at the end. Make sure they're lined up straight. Now, the end of this is not that straight because the fabric maybe wasn't cut completely straight, but what I'm looking at is just to make sure that the edges line up. I know I cut these as 3 inches. Sometimes the edges on this side were cut because I've just cut them freehand. I'm breaking a few quilting rules here. 1, I'm not using a 1/4 inch seam, and 2, I am actually back stitching as I sew each seam. And normally you don't backstitch with a quilt when you're doing a quilt top, because all of your seams would get covered up in the quilt top, so you don't usually bother to backstitch. I'm backstitching because I might not be doing this as an actual quilt. It's more of a sheet, so I might not have a backing on it at all, which means I'm going to have all of these seams poking out at the back. Now, you might think that would be quite uncomfortable. It's actually going on a crib, and the crib has quite a thick foam mattress, so I think it would be okay. So let's just do one more. So you've seen I'm basically just chain stitching. So I've got one going on, not much of a gap between. Once I've got my needle down, I hope you can see that properly. Let's get that focused. Come on. Okay, back stitch a little bit, and then I am just doing straight along the edge, just making sure that these edges are lined up straight so that my strips won't become too wonky. Okay, let's move on to the next stage. Okay, so we're back. I have finished sewing all of my seams together, but as I said, this is not going to be a regular quilt. If this was part of a quilt, if this was a quilt top, then these would be going into a quilt sandwich. You know, you'd have your top, you'd have your backing, and you'd have another piece of fabric behind. Well, mine isn't. So I'm going through, I'm actually zigzag stitching over every single one of these seams. So it means you do have to double stitch this. This is going to be a fitted sheet on a crib mattress. So the mattress itself already has a fabric covering, and this will fit quite tightly around it. So these seams won't be exposed, but as it won't have any backing otherwise when it's being washed and so on, I don't want it to fray. So I'm literally going through right now and just chain stitching every single one. It's a bit awkward, I'm doing this with one hand. Just stitch that first one. And I'm just going back through every piece, every strip right now, and just finding the next seam. So I've sewn that one already, so I'm flipping this over, finding the next seam, doing that one, grab the next piece. I've already done the first one, so I move down to the next one, flip it over, and I'm going to go through each and every one of these, all 25 strips, every seam. So I'll get that done and then I'll get back to you. So far I've sewn all my strips together. You can see one here. I've gone over and zigzagged along the edges, which you wouldn't normally do when you're quilting, but I have because I'm not planning to put a backing on this. And I've gone ahead and ironed all my seams, and I've tried to iron them towards whatever seemed to be the darkest side. I'm now in the process of putting my strips together. I'm using my new design wall, which is just basically a big sheet, a big flannel sheet that I've hung against my wardrobe space, but it works perfectly. So nothing's pinned together yet. This is all just laid out so far on my background. Now, as you can see, I've got a few strips in the middle there that are all that bright blue, and I really don't want so much of that together. I want it to be a bit more random, so I'm going to be mixing these up. All I'm doing now, all I'm doing is just adding strips to this. It's going to be quite long, but as you can see, I've got a patch here that's all the same colour, and I really don't want that much pieces together that's the same colour, so I'm going to remove that one, and let's see if we can find something else that we could put there. I can mix up any that I have already. This one has quite a few of these dark strips going together there, but it has blue in the middle on that one, so maybe we could use this, kind of break it up a bit. I hope you can hear me okay. My back's turned to the camera, but I'm just trying to break up the colours so that I've got the colours as mixed as possible. I want this to look quite random. If I put this back here, I'm going to get these blues together again, so I'm going to swap that piece out, and I've got one here that has some nice purple in the middle, but when I've done that, I've got these two that are the same and these three that are the same, so I'm going to flip that one round. I'm quite happy with that one there, but now I'm not so sure if I'm happy with this one. That does happen. It's not pinned on, so they will fall off at times. But that gives you the opportunity just to look at things, play around with them, see what looks good in the space. Do I want it that way? Do I want it that way? My strips are uneven. Some are a little bit longer than others. That one's not behaving itself. Come on. No, it's decided not to behave itself. But you get the general idea. I'm starting to put them together in a more random fashion and deciding on which strips I think will look well together, which will work well together, so that I've got a nice mix of colours and I'm not getting too much of the same thing next to each other. Let's try this one. Yeah, those two are similar. Those two are the same actually, but it could work. And let's see if I can get one more in there. And once I've got these, I'm quite happy with that. Yep, let's put that one. they're fairly irregular, they're fairly mixed up, then I can just start to sew one strip to the other, straight seam, 1/4 inch seam, or a little bit more in my case. I'm doing a little bit wider than 1/4 inch because I'm going to go back and zigzag over those edges. So I'll show you the next step in a little while. I have now just taken off the 2 first strips that I had hanging on the board, putting them side by side. I'm not going to bother to pin this, I'm just going to hold it together, and starting off making sure that my machine is on a straight stitch and on the right length. I'm going to start off, and I am going to back stitch because of the technique I'm using, and I'm just going to stitch all the way down this side. Just make sure that you keep your seams in the right way so you don't end up flipping a seam back and forth. Just going to continue to do that and add another strip to it. I'm still working on my patchwork sheet here. I've stitched all the pieces together. I actually realized that I had it a little bit longer than I needed, so I decided to just add a few more strips and make it long enough to go from top to bottom without having to add pieces for the sides. Don't know if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense as I said that, but you'll see it as I go along making it. Anyway, I'm now in the process of ironing down my seams, and as you can see, they're going in all sorts of directions. Some are going this way, some are going that way. So I'm going to iron them so that I'm doing an alternating pattern. So basically I'm going to iron this one flat. So these seams are going out. These ones will be coming in. So then I'll iron the next section along here, or press it. Well, some people don't like me using the term ironing. I will be pulling the seams this way, so the seams will alternate so that the seams aren't all going in one direction, and it will hopefully keep everything a little bit flatter. Okay, I really should have my tripod set up for this, but I don't at the moment, and I'm being a bit lazy, I can't be bothered. So I'm going to see if I can explain this and film it while I'm holding the camera. So I'm going to attach, this is the top piece, and I'm going to be attaching the side piece to it now, which is this. And to do that I want to find the center. So I've folded my top piece here. It's actually folded into quarters. So I've folded it lengthwise and then folded it again. So if this is the middle of it, so that's the length. But to do both at the same time, I'm going to put these 2 sections here together, which is the center of both long sides, and I'm just going to cut a tiny little notch along the side there, just so that I can mark the center. So I'm just doing a little notch there. So I've got the center, so when I open that out I'll have a little V shape. I'm going to do the same thing now with the side pieces. So these are going to be the side panels. I've folded them in half. So I'm going to equalize that there, make sure the edges are all equal, balance it out, and I'm going to cut a tiny little notch there. And then I'm going to pin these pieces from the center going out. I'm going to see if I can explain this in another way, just to make it a little bit clearer. So basically, this is my book here with my measurements. And what I'm doing is I've got the top panel. Sorry about that, I'm getting things everywhere. Really should set up my tripod. I hope you can see this on the screen. So this is going to be the top piece. I folded it in half this way and this way again, so I was able to cut a notch there and a notch there. I'm now going to add on 2 side pieces like that, which means I'll sew these two, these two, these two, and these 2 seams together, which will then create this boxed side so I'll be able to get these nice box squared edges. So I hope that makes sense. That's not a very good drawing right there, but it gives you a basic idea. So I'm about to attach these two side panels now. Okay, this is where I'm at. We are drawing to a close. You've got 2, maybe 3 steps left to go. So if you can follow the lines of the strips that were sewn together, you'll notice that this is the top piece. This is the side piece that I sewed on. Now I'd actually done 5 strips for the side, but if I'd taken the time to measure properly, I'd have realized that my top would end here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 strips on this end, and I only needed 4. So I've taken off one of the strips that I've got there. And what we're going to do now is put this right sides together and pin it, sew this corner together. I've got a side here that's already pinned, and this will now give you a nice neat boxed corner. Alright, and you'll be able to see that a bit better when I've got it on the crib. The last thing I have to do then is basically just hem it all the way around and get some elastic in the corners, and we're done. Okay, I know this might look a little bit confusing because it's inside out and we've got all of the strips to deal with, but hopefully I can explain this clearly. This is the top bit. It's folded on a diagonal at the moment, so this is my corner seam where the top meets the side. These strips here are the sides, so you can see a straight line going across there. That is the side of the crib sheet, and this is going to form the base. Now I've actually taken off an angle at the base here. I've cut that off, and the reason for taking that off is because I don't want to use elastic to have to gather in a lot of fabric underneath the crib sheet. So what's going to happen here, see if I can just put this down a second and explain. If I turn it right side out, take my pin cushion off my hand, then I can try and hopefully show you what this is all starting to look like. Sorry for being off camera for a second, but let's get it all the right way round. So here we go. So now we've got the top. This is the corner. This is the top of the crib sheet. These are the sides. There's one side, there's that side, so you can see we've got a nice boxed corner there. And then this bit will be underneath. So I've just taken out an angle rather than having to gather in a lot of elastic on that corner. My last step now is just to stitch the elastic on and then hem it all the way around. And here's the finished product. You can see the boxed corner that we were talking about earlier. You can see the back and the elastic clenching it all together. And you can see this lovely stripped multicolored fitted crib sheet. Hope you've enjoyed this. Hit the subscribe, hit the thumbs up. Bye!